Welcome to the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast, where our goal is to connect listeners to the great outdoors, with hosts Brian Hoffmeyer and Ben Brandell.
I'm host Ben Brandell, owner of Meant to Be Outdoors, instructor of outdoor skills, and passionate about personal growth.
I'm host Brian Hoffmeyer, wildlife biologist and avid outdoorsman. Welcome back to another episode of the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast. It is Myth Monday, and today we are talking about chelonians.
What?
Chelonia. That is an order of animals that everything that is referred to as a turtle belongs to.
Oh, now you're talking my language, turtle.
Talking turtles
Now
today.
I get it. Okay.
That's right. But it's more fun to say chelonian.
Oh, like Shelonian.
Chelonian.
They have a shell.
Yeah, shellonian, no. It does mean they have a shell, but it's CH, not SH. So what's the myth surrounding turtles, Ben? We know that everybody's seen a turtle, but there's a lot of confusion out there, right? Turtle, tortoise, terrapin, are they all the same? Are they all the different? What the heck is the answer? And the answer really is that it's pretty confusing, even for us. We've really kind of had to wrap our minds around this, do some research, but we think we can explain it well so that everybody will be better informed moving forward. So what is a turtle?
It's a turtle.
It's a turtle.
It's a Shelonian. Chelonian.
And what he's trying to say is that everything in the order Chelonia is a turtle. So if you call a tortoise a turtle, you're right. If you call a terrapin a turtle, you're right. And a turtle is a turtle, right?
Correct.
Now everyone's probably going, what the heck are they talking about? We're so confused. There are differences between each one, but they all technically are turtles. That's what the family Chelonia is. Sorry, not family order. There's different families in that order, but it does mean that they have a shell and that they are turtles. So
Let's stop right there. Let's break that down.
Okay.
Because naming animals is where a lot of our problems come from. We can look back. The Native Americans named animals before we ever came over here, and then we started trying to classify them and give them names, and then they didn't always match up with what the natives talked about.
That's where a lot of our Myth Monday topics come from.
Correct, yeah. And so my discovery is that it was Carolus, Linnaeus, I can't even say the person's last name, but they're the ones that started in the 18th century, started this classification of how do we name these animals, how do we put them in groups. And so you just said order, so kind of help all the listeners out there, what is that classification ranking system so we know how far out we are from. So
there's an acronym to help remember that, and it is Dear King Philip came over for great spaghetti.
What?
Yes. Or you could say Dear King Philip came over for great soup. Whatever it is domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Starting at domain, moving all the way down to species, you're basically going to make your group smaller. So domain's going to be your biggest group. You're going to have like features of those animals. Down to kingdom, group's going to be a little bit smaller. Phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. When you get down to species, your group is the smallest, and those animals are most like each other.
So where is the word turtle?
So the word turtle, which refers to Chelonidae, is order. So you're kind of right in the middle there. That's before family. So when you're talking turtle, you could break that down further into families, which would be like Chelidrae, that has your snapping turtles in it, or Chelonidae, that's going to have your big sea turtles in it as well. So they are Chelonidae, but they are broken down into more specific families, and then there's species inside each of those as well.
So then let's share that next. So turtle, tortoise, terrapin, kind of define those for us. What is then a terrapin versus a tortoise?
So a turtle, when you're going to refer to a turtle, that's going to mainly be your water or your marine animals. They really never leave the water except for to lay eggs, which most people who've been to the beach have seen these protected areas of the beach. Everybody knows these endangered leatherbacks, loggerheads, all these endangered marine species. Those are your turtles. They have flippers rather than feet and claws.
Okay, that's good. So the identifiable feature is we'll call them flippers.
Flippers. The diet of turtles is also kind of another telltale sign of where to classify them. Turtles are omnivores, and so are terrapins. And then your tortoises, which is going to be your ones that are always on land, those are herbivores that are only eating plants. So turtles, if you know that they eat meat and plants, you immediately know it's either going to be a turtle or a terrapin.
And then, so you've talked about terrapin. Now, what is a terrapin?
So a terrapin, they are going to be kind of more that they're going to live in water sometimes and on land sometimes. They can do both. So they're going to have webbed feet with claws, so they can live both aquatic, and I'm going to say aquatic because aquatic is more your fresh or brackish water, and then marine is your salt water. So your terrapins are going to be, locally we have several different species. Painted turtles is a really well-known one. These are all your pond turtle species. There are some species that are actually called terrapins. There's a European terrapin. You have red-eared slider turtles. Some people call them red-eared slider terrapins. So it kind of just depends where you live.
Well, let's talk about the red-eared slider because that is one that a lot of people, I'm going to call it pets, but they raise them. They buy them from the store. They bring them home. They put them in, an aquarium.
It's common for an aquarium. If you go to a Bass Pro Shops or something like that, you're going to see that. And for everybody to help you identify that, they're called red-eared sliders. They'll be in water, and they literally looks like somebody took bright red paint and painted a stripe down the side on each side of their head.
Yep.
And they're a cool-looking turtle, but that is a red-eared slider, so that's what we're talking about here.
Right, and a lot of people, even at home, just us listening, can purchase them and have them at home and raise them. Those terrapins, you can see, have the web feet. They're not flippers. And they do come out of the water. You have to have inside the aquarium something for them to get out on, to get out of the water.
Correct.
But they do also spend time in the water. You can find them in our lakes and streams. And, you and I, when we're fishing, we see a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they'll be out sunning. They're out on the logs, out on the rocks. When we're talking about the turtle, your loggerhead you talked about,
they live in the water.
They live in the water.
Right.
So there's some differences there to help.
Absolutely. And with the terrapins, like the red-eared slider, they are considered omnivores, but that's only later in their life. So as juveniles, they're actually carnivores. They're going to eat meat. They're going to seek that so that they're growing. And then once they reach a mature age, then they're going to kind of switch over to omnivores where they eat pretty much anything, plants or animals.
Good.
Another huge difference between terrapins and turtles, besides being aquatic and semi-aquatic or semi-marine and marine, terrapins live the shortest life of all the turtles that we're talking about. They're only going to live 20 to 40 years, whereas turtles, you're talking 70, 80 years for turtles.
Right. So this is confusing.
It is, yeah.
We would be accurate to say that there are turtles that live in the water all their life, for the most part. You have to come to land, lay eggs, all that stuff. But you have turtles that live in the water. You have turtles that live on both land and water, and you have turtles that live only on the land.
That's good, yes. And the turtles that live on land and water are terrapins. The turtles that live only in the water are turtles. And the turtles that live only on the land are tortoises.
Good.
And some tortoises can swim.
So now we're getting into like what you and I know as a tortoise is a box turtle.
Right.
Okay.
And some tortoises can't swim.
Right.
Which is even more confusing when you get in that. But a tortoise is going to mainly spend, we'll say 90+% of their life or 100% on land. They're not going to have web feet. They will have claws, but they're not web feet, and they're gonna be terrestrial. You're gonna find them in your woodlands and your deserts. We've got the opportunity to work with some really cool species of these, some huge species of these. Tortoises get huge. Some of them can be well over 200 pounds and live for over 200 years.
That's because they get as large as their environment, right?
They can get as large as their environment. They grow their whole life, so they're constantly growing. It's not like, the first 10 years of their life, they're going to grow to 200 pounds and live the rest of your life 200 pounds. They're cold-blooded reptiles. All of these are reptiles that we're talking about. So they're growing slowly because their metabolic rate is slower because they're reptiles. They take on the temperature of their environment. They're growing slowly over the course of their life. It's not like you or I that by the time we were 18, 19 years old, we're grown. And that's as big as we're going to get.
So
as long as we lay off all the thick crust pizza.
That's so good, though. So the tortoise, or any of them, turtles, so do their shells grow at the same rate with their body?
Their shells do have to grow with their body. Their shells are made of keratin, and they're going to put it on in layers so that their shell is growing with their body.
Here's one. So I asked that because when you and I were teaching animal, we'll just say any kind of turtle program. I'll just call it turtle program because now how confusing this sounds. So any of our turtle programs, I would have kids ask and bring up this question, can a turtle crawl out of its shell? And that's
all the time.
That's kind of what this myth is today. That's what the myth side that I wanted to present because we used to get it a lot. It was something I never even thought of, heard of. But a lot of kids would ask, can a turtle crawl out of its shell?
Right.
And our answer that we'd give them is what, Brian?
They absolutely cannot
Correct.
crawl out of their shell
Good.
because they are attached to their shell. So unless you're going to leave your spine behind and go on without it, then you probably need to stay with your shell.
Right, and that's what we meant by attached, is that their spine is a part of the shell.
Correct.
So they're not taking a shell off and putting a new shell on.
Yeah.
I do think it comes from Bugs Bunny and your old cartoons. You'll see the turtle coming out of a shell and popping back in.
Right. Well, and there's other animals or crustaceans, or particularly what I'm talking about. You see, there's crabs. Hermit crabs is a common one that people have in their homes. As they grow, they have to go find a shell that fits their body. But the fact of the matter is that they are putting on an inorganic shell. It's not one that is organic that they've grown with their own body. So turtles aren't out finding shells. They have literally grown that shell since they were in an egg until they were hatched.
And so now that we understand the shell, they don't crawl out of it. There are different turtles that use their shell as a defense, and some cannot. So can you kind of help maybe identify a few turtles,
Right.
terrapins, or tortoises? Who does what?
So let's keep it broken down into the three classifications here. So we're going to talk turtles so that everybody's on the same page with me. We're thinking marine, big flippers, Finding Nemo.
Movie, yeah.
I think they were hippie turtles in Finding, Finding Nemo. Like, what's up, man? That's how they talked in Finding Nemo. So the hippie turtles, they can't go all the way in their shell. They can't pull their flippers in their head all the way in. That's not how they can protect themselves. Now, when you start talking about terrapins and tortoises, they can fully retract, close their shell, and that really goes to the shape of their body. So if you look at a turtle, a marine turtle, like a loggerhead, their shell's very flat. So they don't have that space, the volume, to pull in all the bones and skin and stuff that's outside of their body. However, when you get into terrapins or your pond turtles, they're semi-flat, so they have enough room. They can kind of pull most everything in. Then when you get into tortoises, they really have that dome-shaped shell, and they can pull their whole body in, close up tight. And I don't know if you've ever tried to open one that's closed up tight. It's like a safe room. I mean, you're not getting through that. It's so hard to open one.
And that's what protects them. That's what's going to keep them safe. There is a turtle. I'm going to call it a terrapin for right now, but I think it may be actual turtle. In our local lakes, this thing is real thin. We call it looks like a leathery looking turtle. It's got a really its beak or its nose is very pinpointed.
Yeah.
Do you know the name of that turtle? And
You're talking about a soft shell?
soft shell, there it
Yeah.
is. They cannot withdraw. They're going to stay completely exposed because, as we've identified, they're a turtle. Now, I say that they're a turtle, but do they even have flippers?
They don't.
Okay, good.
They have web feet, so they're actually a terrapin.
Terrapin,
but
there you
they'd
go.
we always in Myth Monday have to talk about those exceptions to that rule. They would be the exception to that rule of terrapins being able to fully retract.
Good. So,
Yeah.
again, there's differences even within each of these, which is why this can be so confusing.
Right. It can be. Hopefully, we're laying it out clear enough that people are starting to kind of wrap their minds around what we're talking about here. Something very interesting that I stumbled upon in our research, and if you've listened to this before, you know I'm a deer head, not a gearhead. I'm a deer head. I love whitetail deer. It's my favorite animal. I'm passionate about managing land for whitetails and hunting whitetails, and this is something I didn't know. I did not know this about deer, so there's always something new to learn. Deer eat eggs of terrapins and tortoises.
By accident?
No, so as they're going to come onto land. The terrapins and turtles are going to come onto land to lay their eggs. So as a deer is foraging around, if they smell, they would be able to smell, and they could dig up these eggs and eat them. And obviously they know they're nutritious. So deer are considered herbivores, but if they have the opportunity to get an easy meal like that, they're going to take it, and there's going to be a lot of nutrients they get from that.
That's
so
awesome.
They'll actually eat those eggs. And when I saw them listed as a predator for red-eared sliders, I was like, what? What crazy website is this? And so then I kind of dove in and found it validated in several areas that they will seek them out and actually eat the eggs.
Which goes to it in some episodes in the past. We talked about opportunistic feeders. I think most species that live outdoors have to do that, which is really cool to see.
Another common thing I hear about turtles all the time, I want you to elaborate on this for me, is that a turtle can't flip itself back over. So first of all, can a turtle get flipped on its back by accident?
It can on accident, for
They
sure.
can.
Yeah.
Once it's on its back, is it there?
Sometimes they can flip over, but if they cannot flip over, then they will be stuck on their back and they will die.
They absolutely can. So really what gets them stuck is if there's nothing around, no rock, no stump, no tree, no nothing for them to, because they're going to be moving their legs constantly as they're on their back, even twisting and pushing their head. So if there's nothing for them to push off of to get flipped back over, then yes, they can get stuck on their back and die. What usually happens, they're sitting there not being able to move, flailing all about, can't even really see. They'll usually become prey and something will predate on them and eat them before they even die. But if they can get to something, they'll flip them over. So if you want to be a true conservationist, if you see a turtle flipped on its back, go ahead and flip it over. Help it out.
Over. You bet. That actually leads me into not necessarily a myth, but a movement. A lot of conservation departments have put in a lot of money to share this information of if you see a turtle, leave it alone.
Right.
You know, the crossing the road, to even them going as far as saying, don't ever take them home.
Yeah, don't move them.
Well, so when I was a kid, I moved them. So, today you're going to see people see these turtles trying to cross the road. Again, when I was a kid, we would see that. We'd either straddle it or sometimes we'd get up and we'd move them. So
Yeah.
that was the message they shared is don't move them unless they're about to get squashed or hurt. Then feel free to move them, but move them in the direction that they're already going.
Correct.
And that's where that is their information they're trying to push out, that these turtles have great sense of direction, and however they're getting to where they're going, whether they're swimming or they're walking, they're going to either find food, water, or to lay their eggs.
They're not lost.
They're not
they
lost
have
at all.
purpose and direction.
Correct. And so
Sometimes I
moving them,
wish I had the purpose and direction of a tortoise.
it would be awesome.
Just to know where you're going and why you're going there.
Without
And it
a
doesn't
map.
matter how long it takes to get there. You know you're going
Yeah,
there.
without a map, you know where you're going.
Right.
That would be awesome. But we want to keep them in that area. So moving them is okay off the road to the side in the direction they're going. However, you don't want to remove them completely and like take them home, or I'll say transplant, move them to another park or at your house, because they are territorial. So by moving this turtle to a new place, now it has to establish new territory, and that can be a problem for that turtle.
Yeah. And I didn't plan to say this, but you brought it up to my mind when you're talking about people moving turtles from roads. If you're driving down your neighborhood road or your gravel road or wherever you're at, if it's a quiet, calm road, or you can pull off and move that turtle off the road, that's great. And I've done it, and there are lots of people who are very passionate about doing it. There are lots of people who they love animals, and so do I. I became a wildlife biologist because of my passion for animals and biology. However, there have been times where I have come close to hitting a person or a car, or had to slam on my brakes because somebody made an erratic move with their vehicle to pull over, or they were actually on the road trying to move this turtle. You are too loved and you are too important to risk your life for a turtle. So if you're risking your life to save the turtle, I don't think that's heroism. If you're able to pull over and help the turtle, that's awesome. I love it. I've done it, and I look for those opportunities, but usually it's few and far between, because most cases it's not fully safe for me to pull over to save this turtle. Don't risk your life to save any turtle.
I concur.
Yeah.
I agree completely.
I just thought I should say that, because that has happened to me more than once,
Yeah.
and I do appreciate where people's hearts are on that. But I want people to know my heart, that even if I don't know you, I love you more than I could ever love that turtle. So please take care of yourself.
And the two types of turtles that we're probably talking about here are perhaps the box turtle and your snapping turtles.
Yeah, you see a lot of not alligator snapping turtles. You just see a lot of snapping turtles in general crossing roads, trying to get from one pond to another. But again, they know where they're going. They're not lost. And snapping turtles spend so much of their life in the water, they're not going to be out of it for long. So they're either looking for more water, or they're going to find a place to lay their eggs.
So clarify, because you just used the word alligator snapping turtle.
Right.
And then you hesitated. So what are our differences in snapping turtles there?
So there's several different species. The main ones we are going to have here where we are, and in the South United States, we have common snapping turtles, and then your alligator snapping turtle. Unfortunately, where we're at in Missouri and most of our state, and in many, many areas of the United States, their populations are drastically declining. They're not an endangered species yet. However, due to overhunting and habitat destruction, their populations are not doing well. There are many states, including Missouri, that has banned the harvesting of them. You can't take them. If you even catch one by accident while you're catfishing or something, you can't have it in your possession. You have to release it immediately. They're good to eat. People like to harvest them to eat. But we can't do that anymore. It's against the law here where we are, and there are a lot of states jumping on board with that. I know some of the South, if you really get down in like Louisiana and things like that, the populations are still doing okay, and there are still some seasons on alligator snapping turtles. However, we still see a lot of snapping turtles. Those are going to usually be your common snapping turtle. There is kind of a myth around that because so many people call them alligator snapping turtles. I used to do a funny thing when I would teach. We had alligator snapping turtle it was raised in captivity that we would get out and teach with. And I would say, how many of you have seen one of these around where you live? And half the class would raise their hand.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that probably none of them truly have.
Right.
But
even crossing the road. Right. That a lot of them would say, well, we've seen one crossing the road. Yeah.
And the easiest distinction is common snapping turtle is going to kind of, not a smooth shell, but not
rounded,
rigid.
no ridges.
Yeah, rounded, no ridges. Alligator snapping turtle is going to have 3 very distinct spiky ridges down its shell.
Yes.
Running parallel with its body.
And you can see that from a distance. So you can, and check it out online. Look them up. You're going to be able to see the difference. Another difference is in their mouth, which that's rare to see, so it's so cool.
That's not really the side of a snapping turtle you want to see.
But, an alligator snapping turtle, when it opens its mouth, it has that pinkish red tongue, which they use to fish with, which that whole thing is so awesome. That's why I love alligator snapping turtles. Common snapping turtle doesn't have that. So, when you do see them on the road, I know, again, as a kid, I'd find them crossing the road, trying to head to that next pond. We would go up, we'd check it out, and when you would do it, it would open its mouth, which is like, stand back, don't touch, right? In doing so, you can clearly see that it does not have that red.
So I have this on my list of turtle stories, but I'm going to go ahead and share it now since we're talking about the snapping turtles. Being blessed and privileged enough to watch in areas where people are raising captive alligator snapping turtles, watching them feed is so cool. So alligator snapping turtles spend most of their life in the water, not moving, just completely stationary. And that is actually their hunting strategy as well. They can hold their breath for close to an hour before having to come up to get air, and they spend most of that time on the bottom, not moving. What they'll do, they'll position themselves usually on the edge of currents, which they can feel, and they will allow bait, food to come by. They will open their mouth, and they have an appendage on their tongue, and it is literally their fishing tool. Hold their mouth perfectly still, and this little worm-like appendage will sit there and flap in the current. And as a fish or anything comes to check it out, they clap that jaw down, and it is so fast and so strong, and that's how they're actively hunting, but they're not really moving. They're kind of tricking their prey to come to them, and it's really cool to watch from literally inches away through the glass of a tank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really cool to watch.
It is. And you also talked about breathing. So all turtles breathe atmospheric oxygen.
Correct.
So they all have to come up at some point, whether they live in the water all their life or on the land.
They're not fish, so they don't have gills.
Right.
They're not amphibians, so they don't cutaneously respirate. They have to come up and breathe atmospheric oxygen. That's a really good thing to point out here, Ben.
That's good. So we've been talking about snapping turtles, even kind of in our box turtle side, but moving them, not moving them. Again, if you feel like you need to help that animal, help them. We don't want to transplant them.
Right.
Moving them from the highway, taking them home. And we share those reasons why. Also, in moving them, we have to touch them. So we always had to be careful when we would allow our guest participants, kids, to touch any of the turtles.
We provided them with Germ-X.
Right.
And this is kind of just a disclaimer. If you're going to go handle turtles, most of them are safe to handle if you're taking the proper precautions. And now when you and I go on herpetology trips, we go out looking for things. We a lot of times wear nitrile gloves, but they all carry salmonella, which is you can be really, really sick from it. And it's so easy to think, oh, this is just a shell. It's not dirty. And then easily touch or rub your face and get salmonella. So always wash your hands, wear gloves. When we're providing opportunities for people to encounter turtles, we always have Germ-X present.
It's good. So they can carry salmonella.
Right. And that's a good thing just to share with your kids, because your kids are going to find box turtles if they're outdoors and enjoying themselves, or even pond turtles at the pond, and they should know that they should wash their hands.
Yeah, and I'm here to say I'm not against picking them up and checking them out,
either,
teaching, letting kids see, play. We don't want to roughhouse them, of course, but let them explore and check them out. When they're done, wash your hands.
So hopefully everybody has an understanding now, but I do think we have some good stories to share. So let's share our favorite turtle stories before we wrap this up, Ben. Give me one of yours.
Well, I'll just give you one of the most recent that's happened. You and I were guiding a trip, backpacking trip, and I think we've actually shared this in one of our podcasts, but it's that funny that it's still on my mind. During our trip, we actually got to base camp. We set everything up. Before we went to go set up our latrine area, on the way out, we actually found a
box turtle.
I think it was a three-toed box turtle.
Box turtle.
Yeah, three-toed box turtle. And I kind of took it back to the group, say, hey, check this out, look at it. And they're like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, I gave it to one of the groups.
Yeah, ladies, if you're listening to this, we're not going to give your name, but we're sorry that we're telling this story.
Yeah, so we said, oh, yeah, they loved it. They were checking it out, looking at it. And I was like, all right, it's time to go set up our latrine. So the group, we get up.
We left camp.
We go set it up. We come back, and the two ladies were like, hey,
where's our turtle?
Where'd the turtle go? And I looked at them like, well, it's gone. It has 4 legs.
Yeah.
It got up and walked off. But they're like, well, but where did it go?
And in their mind, they were thinking it's a turtle. It's going to be right here.
Yeah, it's going to hang out.
It's going to be right here when we get back, within a couple feet. And
they're slow.
You're like, I don't know. There's a whole forest like 4 feet away. It could be anywhere by now.
Anywhere by now, right? And it was just that mindset. We do have this mindset. These turtles are slow.
Yeah.
They don't really go anywhere. They are on a mission, man. If you ever watch a box turtle in its environment undisturbed, these suckers move quick.
They do.
And they're going where they want to go. They're moving with a purpose.
So speaking of quick-moving turtles, when I was a young fella living on the farm, this was before that I knew, or that my parents knew, about moving turtles being detrimental. So I would not suggest doing this, but it's a great memory and a great story for me, so I am going to share it. We lived way out. 30 minutes from any Walmart, any grocery store, anything. We were way out. However, every 4th of July, we lived on a cattle ranch that backed up to the river. We had a big gravel bar on the river, and we had people out for a 4th of July party every year. But for the kids, one of the activities was a box turtle race. And my parents would buy all kinds of prizes, and wherever your turtle finished was the prize that you got.
That sounds really fun.
It was really fun. But part of my job leading up to that was to collect turtles in the 2 or 3 days before. We had to have enough box turtles for all the kids. So as we're going around the farm or the gravel roads there, I had this big 55-gallon drum that was cut in half, and we made it into a little turtle environment. And I'm collecting turtles for however many kids we think are coming, and they were everywhere at the time. Now what was cool is I got to scout them, so I knew which one was a racing turtle, and that kind of became a joke in my family of when you see a box turtle, oh, that's a racing turtle there, that's a racing turtle. So I picked out what I thought was a good turtle, I raced it, and I got second place.
What?
So I didn't even pick out the best turtle. I got beat. However, and I already had my prize I wanted, I knew what I wanted, and it was the first place prize. However, the little girl who won, she didn't want the first place prize.
Really?
So I got to get it, and that is how Brian Hoffmeyer got his first fishing pole.
Really?
I won a fishing pole in a box turtle race.
That's awesome. Do you still have that today?
The fishing pole is in the bottom of the river.
Oh, is it really?
I also remember the moment that I dropped that fishing pole out of my canoe and never saw it again.
Oof, that's a tough one.
I cried.
Yeah, I bet so. It'd be a little emotional.
I still have nightmares.
You said you did talk about the detriment of moving turtles. I didn't know that either. Growing up, we used to find box turtles, and we would actually take fingernail polish and mark them to see if we could find them again, if they would stay in the area, and if we would find them again.
Yeah.
we would move them a little bit. You know, we may carry them around for a little bit, race them, whatever. I don't know if we put them back right where we found them, but the understanding of moving them, this is what I want to share, is where the detriment actually comes in, is that an adult turtle, if it is a female, if she's in that area, when she lays eggs, she's keeping that area going, I'll say, with turtles. That's the best way I can describe that. And so by moving her out of that becomes the issue, because you and I, we talk a lot about the food chain.
Right.
You know, and turtles are going to lay eggs, and a lot of them are going to be eaten.
Most
we just found out deer are going to eat them.
Dadgum deer.
Dadgum deer. But that is the hardest age, I'll call it. That's the most difficult time for any animal, is right there at the egg or the newborn.
Yeah.
Right?
They're most vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Once they become
you got it.
an
Nice.
adult. Once they become an adult, though, especially in the box turtle world, they're doing pretty good, and they do seem to live many years.
They live 50, 60, 100 years.
Right. They're doing good. And so taking that adult turtle out of its territory, that's kind of where that impact gets as well.
Right.
And then with the fingernail polish, something that you had brought up to me is that we used to use bright red fingernail polish because we wanted to identify it.
Right.
Now, if that was the adult female, now I'm marking this thing with colors it shouldn't have, that could impact that for its...
Predators, yeah.
Yeah.
You're marking it so you can find it, and unfortunately, it has a long list of predators. Foxes, hawks, all kinds of stuff are going to be seeing it a lot easier now. So while I think it's awesome for children to go out and interact with nature, as parents and adults, we should make sure they're doing that safely. One, if you want to mark them, I don't think that's an awful idea, but maybe use a black or a brown. So it may be harder for you to find, but if you do find it, you're going to know, okay, yeah, it's got a little black on the side. That's one that I found. I wouldn't use a red, white, pink, anything like that, because now you're making it more susceptible to predation. Also, when we're going out, we're touching them, let's make sure we're washing our hands so our kids aren't getting sick as well. And I think if you want to bring the turtle up to the house, bring it up to the house, but have an idea of where it was so you can take it back. They are territorial. They know their home range, and so if you want to check them out and teach your kids about them, take them back to that general area where you found them, so that the food chain and all that can be undisturbed.
Absolutely. It's good.
So I want to share just a couple more stories before we wrap up here. I also decided one time that I was going to have a pet red-eared slider, and I actually, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I had a rusty old red wagon, and I brought this red-eared slider up from the river. And I decided he was going to be my pet. Well, one day, I decided that he stunk. And what better to do when you stink than to get a bath, right?
Right.
So I put water in my rusty old red wagon, and I put my red-eared slider in my rusty old wagon, and I was scrubbing him and giving him a bath, and he did not like it. In my mind, I remember thinking, holy smokes, that thing does bite, because I didn't think that it bit, and it latched onto me, bit me like a snapping turtle, and lots of blood, and cut me really deep, not to the bone, but really, really deep. And I just was, that was the last day that I had him, because all I could think about was, Mom, give this thing back to the river. He is not my friend. He is not my pet. But
well, hopefully you learn that turtles don't need baths.
Why not?
Second, though, the beak on a turtle, very sharp.
It is sharp, yeah.
They
rip flesh.
That's exactly, they're designed to do that, for sure.
And and they're good at it. Let me tell you from experience.
Sounds like they're really good. Don't give them a bath. No, that's an awesome story, but that is you and I have picked up a lot of turtles as kids. I encourage my kids to handle whole turtles, but we have to be careful. Anything that has a mouth can bite, and so be careful in that.
Right. My last one that I want to share, we had the opportunity to work with a huge African spurred tortoise. Now, this particular animal was named Sheldon, aptly named Sheldon, and we took him to programs and taught with him. He wasn't fully grown because these tortoises, again, that species can be 200 pounds, 200 years. This is a desert species. They dig. They burrow down into things. Something really cool that I just love to talk about was, because I was blown away by their intelligence. And it's just this kind of slow, we just kind of have this perception of this slow, dumb animal. We were able to, me and another keeper, we worked with Sheldon, and we trained him to load up into his own crate He could go up a ramp and into his crate or into a wagon or something. And the purpose of that was as he was going to get bigger, he was kind of right there at the end. Some people could still hold him and carry him, and some people couldn't. But as he was going to get bigger, if he was still going to be an education animal, he needed to be able to load himself up onto really a wagon so he could be moved. But we were able to teach him with colors and food. Watch the color of this stick, and he would go up this ramp and load himself up. And I was blown away that he was so trainable. So they're not a dumb animal at all. I thought it was really cool to watch that because I didn't know that before that moment.
That's a great observation, bro.
All right. Should I summarize and wrap this up? Think I can summarize and make this very confusing topic clear for everybody?
Let's try to bring it home.
All right, let's bring it home. So turtles. Everything that is a chelonian can be referred to as a turtle. That includes turtles, which most people, when they're referring to a turtle, are referring to marine animals with flippers. Also includes terrapins, which are going to be your class of turtles that spend some of their time in the water and some of their time on the land. They have webbed feet with claws. And then you're going to have your tortoises that are your terrestrials that are going to spend most of their time on land, and they do not have webbed feet. It's going to be more like walking on their fists. Hopefully that gives everybody an understanding of what a turtle is, all the different types of turtle, terrapin, tortoise. If you guys really like what we're doing and you love to support us, we would love for you to find our Linktree link that's on Facebook, Instagram. I believe it's even on our TikTok. If you go to that, you'll be able to follow our Patreon. We would love for you to become a monthly member and support us. We have $5 and $10 a month members. That would greatly help our podcast so we can keep it going because it does take a lot of time and money. So we would really appreciate the support. And then help us move up the charts on these podcast platforms. Leave us reviews and ratings. Hit that automatic download button so that every time we put out a new episode, you're getting that download. We greatly appreciate you listening. Between now and our next episode, we hope that you spend some time outdoors and maybe even find a turtle. Thank you for listening to the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast, hosted by Brian Hoffmeyer and Ben Brandell. Please help us by subscribing. Also, follow along on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.